Recording started. All right, let me start again. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for being with us for tonight's panel on participating in graduate education in preparation for a career in student affairs and student services. My name is Candy Mink-Salas, and I am a faculty member at Azusa Pacific University, and I'll be moderating the panel. What we'd like to do is to basically introduce ourselves. We have, besides me, we have 4 panelists tonight, and we want to share with you some information about our own programs, and then really just answer some general questions about graduate school, how it works, why you would want to get a degree in this area, and then we absolutely want to answer your questions. So we will be using the chat feature to have you ask questions. So at any time during the program, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat feature, and I will be monitoring that and making sure that your questions get answered, okay? So again, I'm Dr. Candy Mink-Salas. I am working at Azusa Pacific University, where I am the director of the doctoral program in higher education leadership, our EDD program. And I just finished serving as the director of the master's program there for the last 5 years. And so I was more than pleased to moderate this panel and recruit these fine people to give you some information about graduate school. So let's kind of start from the beginning. I'm going to ask each of them in turn to introduce themselves, tell you a bit about what they do on their campus and a bit about their program. And Dr. Eugene Fujimoto, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Mink-Salas, for inviting me and us to be part of this. So welcome to all of you. I'm really excited to see new faces and folks that are interested in getting into this field. So welcome to you all. Let's see, I'm at Cal State Fullerton. I work in the MSHE program, the Master of Science in Higher Education program. This is my 11th year. I can't hardly believe I've been there that long, but 11th year in the program there. I'm currently serving as a faculty member and the department chair. And I'm teaching in the program. I teach instructional leadership class, which is in the 4th semester of our 5-semester program. Let's see, my background is, I started in student affairs many years ago, kind of accidentally, like I think a lot of people, kind of stumbled into it as I knew I was getting into kind of the counseling field. I knew I wanted to work with people of color, and as I became more aware of my own issues of identity and those kinds of things. And so I kind of stumbled into it, found it was really rich, and I've been working in higher ed for the last 25, 30 years, I think, as a result. So anyway, I ended up doing a lot of equity and diversity work on different campuses. But let's see, our program is focused on leadership. It's a 5-semester program. We are not a counseling program, so we're focused on a broader issues of leadership. We have a focus on equity and social justice in a pretty strong way, and do some community-based work as well. But welcome to y'all. Good to meet you.
Great, thank you so much, Eugene. And can I ask Dr. Cindy Payne to go next, please?
Hello, my name is Cindy, and I'm at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. We have a 48-hour counseling student affairs program here. I have been at the university since 1989, which is before many of you were born, I know. I worked full-time in student affairs in a variety of different roles. And graduated, retired 5 years ago from full-time work, and have been teaching in a part-time basis and coordinating the counseling student affairs program for the last 10 years. So there's a little bit of overlap with those 2 jobs there. Our program requires that all students have a graduate assistant position, and so that addresses the financial aid piece of it. So it's a two-part parallel application process. You'll apply for the Counseling Student Affairs Graduate Master's Degree Program. And those applications are due by January 15th each year. And then by February 1st, you would be applying for any graduate assistant positions that you're interested in on campus. We typically have between 80 and 100 people apply for the program. 60 to 70 people are completely eligible for the academic side. And so you'll get a first round offer on the academic side. And then those that end up enrolling in the program are those that also were able to secure a graduate assistant position. And so those interviews take place from the 1st of February through about the 1st or middle of March. And we offer positions concurrently. You'll get an offer to be in the academic program with a GA position as the whatever your GA position might be, so that you're getting both of those offers at the same time, typically right around spring break. And so we try mid-March to be making offers into the program and for GA positions. So students have the option to rank all of the departments that they interviewed with for GA positions. So we're going to look at the student ranking and we're going to look at the departmental ranking and find hopefully a beautiful marriage in there for students to have graduate assistantships. Because the program is 48 hours, that's 12 hours a semester for 4 semesters, you will have your GA for all 4 semesters also. The GA pays for all classes, health insurance, and what am I forgetting? Classes, health insurance. It does not pay for fees. So there is a little bit of an additional cost for fees, like a parking permit. Those kinds of things are not included. And it does not cover summer school. Our program doesn't require summer school. Most of our students either travel or do an internship with one of the higher ed associations during the summer. But a number of our residential life students stay on campus and work at an hourly wage during the summer. So those of you that are residence life folks, we have a massively large residential campus, and most students that are going as undergrads are living on campus here. And so lots of opportunities in a lot of different areas to work in residential life and any of the other departments across campus. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cindy. I'm going to ask Dr. Jonathan O'Brien to go next, please.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's glad to see that there are folks interested in our profession. My name is Jonathan O'Brien, and I am an associate professor in educational leadership. And my program is called Student Development in Higher Education. We shorten that to SDHE. I'm the co-coordinator right now. And so I work with another gentleman by the name of Dr. Paul Ratana-Sirapong. We call him Dr. Paul. And the two of us are coordinating the program. I wanted to let you know also, if you'd like to find out more about our program, we do have an information session. You could find that on the web. It is planned for November 4th, and it's at 4 p.m. That's Pacific time. And I'll be there, and there'll be some other students there in a live panel to talk more about our program. Our program's deadline for application for each year is December 1st. And then we usually are making offers in March, but we also respect an April 15th deadline. So that gives you a little bit of time to think about what programs you'd like to choose from. And there are many great ones out there. A little bit about ours. Our program is counseling based, and we have a social justice and equity focus. And we are really excited as a faculty. We're going through a process called intergroup dialogue right now, and we are reshaping our curriculum. We've always had a focus on social justice, and that's, you know, manifest in forms of equity and access to higher education. But given recent events, we've really been and the opportunity right now to redo our curriculum. we really are going to do some, I think, pretty transformative things to our curriculum with regard to how we view racism, anti-Blackness, and bias in a variety of forms. A little bit about me, my background. I was really active as an undergraduate in the traditional things like student government and all of that. And I ended up going to graduate school in Missouri. I'm a Long Beach native, but I left California to go to the Midwest and really had quite an eye-opening experience there. I really experienced some bigotry in that moment, and that really gave me it kind of galvanized my focus. I identify as a gay man, and I experienced what we would call microaggressions and maybe some mesoaggression, mid-level aggressions when I was there. And it really, around that time in history, there was a lot of AIDS activism going on and things like that. And so it really galvanized me in terms of wanting to support students who experience bias, and that includes, you know, racism and sexism and homophobia, and now transphobia. I ended up coming back to LA, and I worked at Loyola Marymount, and I also worked at Occidental College, and I was an administrator for about 15 years, and then I started teaching at Cal State Long Beach 10 years ago, and I was the coordinator for 7 of those years and really got into the recruitment part of the program. I think our program is really great because it focuses on counseling, and there's about 18 units there, and it prepares you to work in everything from a community college faculty position as a counselor all the way into any kind of leadership role or even research role. And so we've been successful in getting maybe about 1 or 2 students a year to even go on to UCLA, University of Iowa, University of Toronto, to pursue PhD work, actually doctorates in educational research. But many of our graduates go on and they work in counseling positions in community colleges. They work in residence life. They work in leadership at 4-year universities. Our degree is, as I said, 3 years. It's 51 units, but if you choose to do a thesis project, that's an additional 6 units, so you'd have 57 units. We have certificates in community college, the community college environment. And we also have a new one in disabilities, applied disability studies. And that's really popular with our students right now. We have, as I said, a thesis as a kind of culminating experience, or we have comprehensive exams. And, you know, we are in the process of, as I said, kind of reshaping our curriculum. And I'm really excited about where it's going to go. It's going to talk a lot about how issues of racism and various forms of bias intersect with higher education and what our students can do to be advocates for social change. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Jonathan. And next, I'd like to ask Dr. Gwen Garrison to share with us.
Hey, good evening to everyone out there. It's really great to meet you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit slightly different journey in this higher education realm of student affairs and talk a little bit about my own program as well. So I came up through the academic advising ranks at a small graduate school. And what that meant is I interfaced with every other department on the campus, especially the registrars and admissions offices coming through. So I don't have a traditional path through residence life, but I came through academic advising. And as that was happening, one of the things that was so amazing in it is that I got exposed to a lot of data. And I got to see how the campus was using data to drive their own decision-making. That led me to a career in student affairs or in institutional research. And what I then went on to my doctoral work, really kind of focusing how we can use and harness data to drive decisions.
Sorry, this is complicated. But the early gentrifiers are gentrified. Okay, the pioneers at
Joanne,
this stage,
can you?
first pioneers.
You can mute her, I think, Nan.
Oh, there we go. Got it. Thanks.
Sorry about that. So I went on to be part of an assistant director in institutional research. And then after I finished my doctorate, I went to Washington, D.C. to be a part of the big educational data shops there, driving decision-making by harnessing data. So I was able to use my skills in analysis and learned a lot about how big data systems work or large data systems work. Had the chance to work with the Department of Education, standardizing different kinds of data elements that are used in IPEDS collections. And I got involved in a lot of policy work as a result of that. So the important part of this is that really then led me back to my current position of being the founding director of a new program where we take education evaluation, data analysis, and data management. So just how to be a person inside and on campuses and how to drive decision-making through storytelling, whether that's on a dashboard or whether that's in a standard kind of report. And it's a lot of fun. Everything goes well. I'll graduate my first 2 students this spring. And it's the degree program is 32 units and it can be finished in 3 to 4 semesters. Most of the students take 2 classes a semester. Some people are on a slightly faster or slightly slower track. The program culminates in a practicum where you get to actually exercise your skill set in some really fundamental way. And often right now, that is, I'm a practicing consultant along the way, so I have lots of needs of graduate students along the way on my programs, and that really helps them hone in on their own practicum experience or to join me in something that I'm doing. We are very fortunate to offer 29% of all of the tuition is in fellowships. And then, like I said, what we try to do for any student who wants to become a research assistant with me or someone else on the faculty, or an internship in one of our institutional research offices where we have colleagues who need those positions. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to start. So yeah, let me just say one more thing about how equity is playing out in the data realm right now. So one of the things that is really important about being a truth teller and trying to get the right data is you realize that sometimes the data are incomplete or they're moving. So probably the hottest topic right now among all of us is how do we adequately collect on race and gender, on sex and gender. So we have a federal standard on race and then people supplement that, but we are facing all kinds of storytelling challenges to adequately represent our student body and our faculty. So how do we adapt and make things like sex and gender much more friendly question that people can answer? So that's just how equity and social justice play out in the data realm in my program.
Great, thank you so much, Gwen. And I will share with you all that I've put each of our panelists' name and title in the chat. If you're familiar with saving the chat to your own computer, I would encourage you to do that at the end of our time together. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, you can privately message me in the chat and I can tell you how to do that. It's basically clicking that little box in the lower right-hand corner and it gives you the option to save the chat. I'd like to share with you a bit of information about the Azusa Pacific University's master's degree program that prepares people for the field of student affairs and student services. Our program is called the College Counseling and Student Development Program. Again, we also use the acronym CCSD. And this is a 2-year program. It is 45 units. We also do not require summer. So it's, there's one course you can take in the summer if you want to accelerate your program, but you don't have to. And our program is focused around counseling skills, issues of equity and justice, and research. We have 3 distinct research courses that are a sequence in year 2, and we have 3 distinct courses that are focused around issues of diversity and equity. That gets important as you apply for certain jobs in the community college, for example. Our deadline is January 15th. And the degree results in a Master of Science, MS. Our culminating project is a capstone project. In our field, in all of our fields in student affairs, there is a set of professional standards that have been adopted by our professional associations called the professional competencies. And in our program, we take those 10 competencies and we ask those nearing graduation to build an online portfolio demonstrating their competence and their growth in each of those areas. And then our students present to a panel and to a public forum, if they choose, the results of their work for the 2-year program. So it's a kind of a unique way, but various ones of us are doing either something like a portfolio or like a project as Gwen described. A thesis is one of the options as Jonathan described. There are also exams. I think, Eugene, can you say just a word about your culminating experience, which I know is an exam?
Sure, we do a comprehensive exam at the end, and it changed actually with COVID-19 because we were trying to adapt to what was going on, and so it ended up being a 2 or 3 day take-home exam. Typically, we've had it be more on campus and taking it together all as a cohort, but we did it separately, and we're thinking about shifting that after that experience. So we'll see how it goes this year and what it looks like. But yeah, we do have a comprehensive exam that kind of encompasses every class that you take in the 5 semesters.
Great. And Cindy, is yours program something like that?
No, we don't have a final exam or a thesis. Students do a practicum. Some places call it an internship. Their final year for 300 hours of additional work in a completely different area than where your graduate assistantship is.
Got it. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I know enough about all of your programs to know that I think all of us have either what are called internship or field work requirements for a certain number of hours as one of the graduation requirements. Because, you know, part of what we're doing, we have a set of knowledge that we want to communicate to you, but we also are preparing you for a field, for a career. So we want you to leave our programs very employable. That's one of our goals. And so in order to help you be the most employable as you can be, we'd like you to get a variety of different experiences while you're with us during the time of the program. Okay, thank you so much, Cindy, for reposting the panelists information. And thank you so much, Gwen, for reminding everybody that if you do have questions along the way, please put them in the chat and I'll monitor the chat. But my next question for the panelists is this. Why is it important for someone who wants to go into student affairs or student services to have a master's degree? And this is just open to anybody.
Well, I can start. I mean, a couple things come to my mind. One is if you've not worked in the field, I think there's a lot to be learned about kind of the history of student affairs, some of the foundational documents and the organizations. There's a professionalization process, I think, that students often go through as they engage in this profession of student affairs. And a lot of folks think, is there even they don't know that there's a field like student affairs until they actually talk to somebody who works in it. So it's kind of surprising. But there is a whole process around that, I think, around learning many things around what the field is. The other thing I was thinking about, though, has to do with, I think, what some of my colleagues had mentioned, and that is an opportunity to be able to engage with a lot of the issues that are happening contemporaneously in the field. Like, for example, the issues around racism, anti-racism, things that have to do what does it mean to go online the way we are. All these different things that are drastically affecting all of our lives. Our programs, I think, give you a real chance to process those as you are learning about the field, because we are adjusting too as we do this. So I think the master's degree piece is so crucial to be able to understand some of that and to be with a cohort of fellow learners as you go through a process of professionalization and of learning and of figuring out what this field is about and how you best support other students through their educational process. So that's a few thoughts I had.
I'll jump in. I completely agree with the cohort experience. I think experiencing classes each semester together as a group and experiencing the work that you do in your graduate assistantship and having that as a shared experience. These are people that you're going to have in your life for the rest of your life. And I think that Flagstaff is a relatively small community, about 75,000 full-time residents in Flagstaff. And so when somebody relocates to Flagstaff with a different background than higher ed and thinks, well, you know, all I'm going to do is be an administrator in this department, anybody can do that. I've worked at a department store, I've worked in a bank or something like that. I think they find really quickly that someone who has a background and the education in college student development and in all of the issues, as Eugene said, that we're dealing with college students. The class that I'm teaching right now, the impact of college on students. So each student is doing a research project into one very small, very diverse group of undergraduate students here at NAU, and what is the impact of college on that demographic. And so then taking all of that knowledge and all of those things and the support system with you into your first full-time job, I think is incredibly, incredibly helpful. And I just, having worked in student affairs so long, I just see this real difference between people who bring the education and the knowledge into the work experience with them versus those who are looking for a paycheck. And that's really what they're there for. We call it NAU blue blood here because blue is one of our colors, you know, so people are either bleeding NAU blue blood or they're just working because they wanted a job in town. And you can really, really, really tell the difference.
Thank you, Cindy and Eugene. I'll just add from a practical perspective, I didn't mention earlier, but prior to my time as a faculty member, and I've been doing this for about 6 years, I was in student affairs for 28 years and had a variety of positions, both as a staff member and as a manager and a leader in higher ed, and had the opportunity to hire many, many people over those years. And I can tell you that, again, from a practical perspective, when hiring a student affairs professional position, whether that is a staff member or an assistant director or department director or, you know, on up into dean and vice president, really the first piles I would make of resumes, this is back in the days when there were actually paper resumes, would be the people with master's degrees in the field and people without. So even just in the job searching process, you will be at a great advantage in this field if you have a master's degree. Overall, if you have a master's degree, and particularly in the field of higher ed or student affairs or student services. Okay, I'm guessing that most of you on the call, maybe not all of you, but most of you on the call have gotten interested in the field of student affairs. Maybe by show of hands, either real hands or virtual hands, how many of you are Naspa undergraduate fellows? I'm guessing we probably have some Naspa undergraduate fellows. Okay, so it looks like we have at least 4 or 5, great. So for the rest of the people on the call, Naspa undergraduate fellows are undergraduates who are very interested in the field of student affairs, and they are participating in a program through Naspa to explore the field. So I'm guessing that most, again, if not all of you are pretty much committed to exploring this as a career option. And now you're thinking about applications. So let's get down to a few of the brass tacks questions that I find often come up in a session like this. If the panelists could just talk a little bit about the application process itself. What should students expect? What is it like? And what does your ideal candidate look like? What should these students have in mind as they prepare their application materials?
I can go. So, you know, definitely be aware of the deadlines, be aware of the information that each program is looking for in their application packet. And each application is different. So be attentive to that. One of the things as a committee member for now, you know, going on more than 10 years, it's nice when the applicant has taken time to respond to what it is that we're asking for. And that's partly because when we're looking at applicants, we're looking across folks who are applying for our program. And so when we're putting out a prompt, you know, maybe there's 2 or 3 prompts. At least I can say for us, we maybe have 2 or 3 prompts in a sort of narrative response. And we're looking for creativity within the response, but please do respond to the prompt, because it does help us to look at what we're looking for with regard to ideal candidates, which I'll talk about in a second. We at Cal State Long Beach were just staunch in our pride to be face-to-face for so long that we, until just last year, required people to turn in paper packets. You had to mail it or, you know, and get a return request. And I'm quite pleased that now you can apply online. I am delighted about that. So there are shining, you know, rims around these bad dark clouds. So what I would say is do make sure that all the materials are there, but we're a bit lenient in our committee on things that you can't control. So, you know, we require 2 letters of recommendation. We do not require any GRE, and I think many programs are not are doing that. I don't know, but I mean, we're not requiring the GRE, and we haven't in our master's program for a long time. But we are looking to see that your narrative is on time, and that you have filled out. For us at the State University, there is something called CSU Mentor, and that has a hard deadline, and that has a fee that we can't waive. Unfortunately, I think now it's about $55, but beyond that, we are willing to look at, you know, if you've got a late letter from a faculty member, we get it. Faculty members can kind of, you know, it's hard to corral them to get them to do what you want. But we would say start now for our program, because December 1st is coming up pretty quick. So reach out to your faculty or staff or professional recommendations. In our program, we'd like to see recommendation from who you choose, but it's really valuable if it is someone who knows you. So let me tell you that I would much rather, as a committee member, read something from an assistant director of student activities who can say, I watched you grow and develop for 4 or 5 years, than for you to get me the president of the university because you met him or her twice at a reception. I mean, I don't want to read a form letter. In our program, we really look at a rich, descriptive letter, because, you know, we don't require a GRE, and we do look at the GPA, but what we're looking for is what kind of professional you aspire to be. In your statement, we're also looking for you to say, how can our program help you? You know, we want to know what would graduate study add to your portfolio, because we realize you're not an expert, otherwise you wouldn't be applying for a program. But what we're looking for is, in our case, as a counseling program and one that focuses on equity and diversity, how have you reached out and helped people, supported people to achieve their goals? So you notice I said people to achieve their goals. You don't have to have worked in higher ed. If you worked in a church or faith group and you did resume critiques, or if you did something with elderly where you were helping people, that's what we want to know, because that's what we're trying to capitalize on. And so the last thing I would say is we have a fellowship called the Cynthia Johnson Fellowship, and that's for one student. And then we have some RA positions, some residence hall, resident director kind of positions. And so there are prompts there as well that are unique, and there we're looking for your experience as well. And so your resume that we asked for, it would be great if that can speak to those professional experiences, because that just helps us to make that decision and get to know you in writing before we actually then can narrow it down to folks we invite to campus for interviews. And so for that, yeah. stop at that point.
And quite a few things that Jonathan said, I think, are going to be true for all of us. But let me ask the other three, what would be different aspects of your application process?
I think I don't know how different this is, but I just want to add to what Jonathan said. Be incredibly comprehensive because we can't read your mind. And so if there's a very competitive pool that is applying for the positions, and you've had all these experiences and you only choose to share the one that seems most relevant, I would really encourage you to share them all, because any volunteer work, any professional work, any paraprofessional work, different things you've been involved with as an undergraduate, or if you graduated a while ago and are doing some work in between time, just be very, very comprehensive. We're looking to bring in as diverse a cohort as possible, because we know that you'll learn a lot if you're in a cohort with people who are different than you. And so we only get to know you if you share all of those things with us.
So I'll go next, Candy, and let me say that I want to do this in a way that blends a little bit more information about what Claremont is doing. So we also have a master's in student affairs and social justice, and it's really focused on thinking very deeply about these issues in your context of higher education. So you're going to have some background in history and leadership and theory and development. And then where it overlaps with my program is how can you use data to actually drive your insights and build what you need to do in order to have better programming and have that's more effective for your students on campus. So in one side, if you do just the MA in social justice and student affairs and social justice, we are looking and have deadlines every semester. And both the director, Dr. Ana Gonzalez, and myself review our applications specifically for every person who applies. I'm kind of looking for the person who maybe has had some broad experience, but is really looking for data to drive decision-making and interested in how to do that analysis. I don't require a background in statistics. We'll teach you that. We've got a very good, gentle teacher who will walk you through that. We've got really terrific people who have long established careers teaching in student affairs in our program. So Dr. Gonzalez and I do a kind of blended approach for those who want to have a blended kind of topics in this, or you can go deep in either kind of degree field that supports both in higher education.
Can I add one thing? Just a thought that I had in addition to all of what's been said is, I know we really look for folks who have the capacity to be self-reflective, that we want to know about your experiences at a deep level, about, you know, issues that you've overcome, how you continue to learn about yourself, the things that you can do to be able to share with us about how you've learned and grown over time. Those kind of things to us are really important, that we want to know that you have the capacity to do that, and then we work with you around those things. So that's an important piece that I would share also. Oh, and then one other thing is transcripts. Make sure you request your transcripts early, because we have a lot of trouble with transcripts, and maybe Jonathan could confirm that in the CSU system, we want your transcripts. If you took one, you know, physical education class 10 years ago, we want that transcript or it's not complete. So you have to get everything in. So make sure that's just a programmatic thing that happens in the CSU. I don't know what the other institutions do, but make sure you get those requests for transcripts in early.
Right. Yeah, and we know that applying for grad school is almost like having another part-time job, right? It's a lot of work. We appreciate the work that you put into it. Very similar process in the APU CCSD program. I would just add, again, reinforcing one of the things Jonathan said about the prompt, making sure you understand the prompt for your personal statement, or sometimes it's called letter of intent. For us, what we really look for there is, why are you interested in Azusa Pacific University's program? What is it that is attracting you or drawing you? And so that's going to require some research on your part, whether that is investigating the website, or speaking to current students, or speaking to faculty, or attending one of our information sessions. And let me just encourage you, it's okay to reach out to faculty and basically interview us before you apply, or ask if we can refer a current student to you, especially if there's a student that you want to speak to that perhaps has some commonalities with you. I'll give you an example. We're very open and encourage undocumented students to participate in our program. And I will almost every year have an undocumented person thinking about the program who wants to speak to somebody who is not documented, who's going through the program, just to understand what the experience is like. I think that's very smart on your part to do that kind of investigation. Let me just do a little bit of norm checking. Are any of us requiring the GRE at this point? Yeah, I don't think so. I think the days of standardized testing are pretty much over. So none of us are requiring the GRE. Yeah, and let's say yay about that.
You all are so lucky.
So lucky. Yes, you guys are lucky. That's our I walked 5 miles in the snow to get to school moment, right? We had to do the GRE. Are we all doing some kind of information sessions that students can participate in online? Okay, so that's going to be on our website. So I know, for example, the APU CCSD program does one once a month from now through January.
We have one tomorrow, actually.
Oh, Eugene's got one tomorrow night.
At 6 o'clock. So
yeah, 6 o'clock. Check out their website, Cal State Fullerton. Let's talk about deadlines. I know the state deadlines tend to be a little bit earlier. So Cal State Long Beach is December 1. Is that the same for Fullerton, Eugene?
No, we're February 1. We're much.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that's my misconception. APU is January 15. How about Cindy and Gwen?
NAU is January 15th.
Okay.
Let's see, for fall of 2021, it's May 15th.
Okay. And Gwen, did I understand that you take in students every semester?
We do.
Okay. And for us, we only start students once a year in the fall. And I think that's true for a number of the other programs.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Do you all require a resume as a part of the application packet? We do.
We do.
Okay, I'm seeing heads nodding. And so that's also important. Same advice that Cindy was giving about be comprehensive. I can't tell you the number of resumes I've seen where there just wasn't much there. And then when I got to the interview phase, I would ask the student, well, have you ever, worked in the community? Have you ever volunteered? Do you work with your church or synagogue or mosque? And it's like, yes, 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 yes. Like, put it on your resume. So make sure you're working with someone with your resume who can help you be very expansive in what you'll want to put there. Again, as Jonathan mentioned, we want to know about anything where you've been leading groups or interacting with other people or providing assistance to other people or having to practice public speaking. All of those are skills that feed into the field of student affairs. I just got a question. Is it a resume or a resume and a CV? CV standing for curriculum vitae. So in general, and those definitions can get kind of fuzzy, but in general, a resume is a shorter document that really just focuses in that resume on the thing that you're applying for. It takes all of your experiences and just kind of focuses on the things that are relevant. A curriculum vitae, which is mainly used by faculty, lists like everything you've ever done, every article you've ever written, every workshop you've ever presented. It's, when you get to be my age, I'm in my 50s, this thing is like 15 pages long. We don't want to see that. We want to see the shorter resume that's focused on the things you've done that would apply to your application to a graduate program. Okay. How many pages are generally expected on a resume? At this point in your career, if you went from high school to college and you're going now from college to graduate school, that's probably going to be no more than 2 pages typically. In some fields, I don't know if this is still true, but in some fields they tell you your resume should only be 1 page. In higher education, we don't believe in that. You know, that's not important. Now, I'm not suggesting it should be 7 or 8 or 9 pages, but I think if you're going into 2 pages, even 3, if you have a lot of related experiences, it's okay to do that. Just make sure it's related. Okay, let me just quickly scan.
I just add one thing about the resume though.
Sure, absolutely.
When you do I would rather see like 2 or 3 bullets, you know, like, you know, dots and sentences for what you've done, but give me numbers, measurements, ranges of your impact. Don't recopy a job description that just describes what your job was. I'd like to know how many students were in the program you attended, or did that fundraiser you did for a social organization raise $2,000 because of your work, or how many students were in your caseload when you were a peer counselor? You know, some specifics about what you accomplished rather than just a description.
Right. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you've been doing some work in your community through a community center or community organization, mentoring high school students who want to go on to higher education. A less powerful way to say that would be served as a mentor in the community service organization. A more powerful way to say that would be mentored 15 high school young men and women, and 80% of them went on to college. That gives you kind of a number and an indication of what your efforts resulted in. Okay, let's move on to a new question. Let's talk a little bit about money and financial aid. I know a few of us have already started this process, but of course, one of the big questions about going to grad school is, how am I going to pay for this? You might be coming out of undergrad with loans already that you have to, well, those will be deferred while you're in graduate school, but still, you know, you might start to worry, how much am I going to owe by the time I get finished? And so if we can answer some questions, we've had some of this information shared, but what other information is important for these students to know about? How much does grad school cost? What kind of financial aid is available? How does the graduate assistant process work? And do you offer any scholarships?
I'll just complete, because I already started most of that. Grad assistant is required. 100% tuition coverage for in-state or out-of-state. It's treated exactly the same. So no difference in tuition for in-state or out-of-state with a graduate assistant. Health insurance is included. And the piece that I forgot, that I didn't think of, is a $14,000 stipend per academic year. And so that is what most of the GAs are currently paying this academic year. So I don't anticipate that changing a lot. For those that work in residential life, they also get room and board on top of that $14,000 stipend.
And Cindy, about how many people do you bring in each year?
Our largest cohort has been 22 and our smallest was 14. So really anywhere between 14 and 22.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to add about money? I can go next. At Azusa Pacific in the CCSD program, we offer both graduate assistantships and scholarships. And so the graduate assistantships, in a very similar fashion that Cindy described, when you receive we've received your application, here's some more information. You receive information about our graduate assistantships. And once you're accepted, you are able then to review all the graduate assistantships and make some selections of who you'd like to interview with. And so we have you interview with typically between, anywhere from 4 to 8 positions. We have a 2-day period that we do that. Pre-COVID, that was in person. We actually had admitted students come to campus in March to go through what we call graduate assistantship interview days. This past March, we had to shift that within 4 days to an online experience. And we did it. We were very proud of it, and it worked. So I don't know if we'll go back to in person, quite honestly. We may end up keeping it a remote experience because it worked, and then students didn't have to worry about coming to Azusa. But it's a matching process, as Cindy described. You tell us your priorities, and the people who interviewed you tell us their priorities, and then we work it out so that everybody hopefully gets one of their top 3 choices, and that does typically work out that way. Graduate assistantships pay $7,000 a year to the student in monthly installments. And then the other part of our financial aid package is scholarships. And we award scholarships in the amount of between $1,000 and $6,000. Scholarships are primarily based on need that we assess through the FAFSA, or if you're unable to fill out the FAFSA, for example, if you're undocumented, we work with you to fill out a scholarship application of our own device. And then we award based on a combination of your application materials and your financial need, heavily weighted toward financial need. I can tell you that we've been able to award everyone who requested a scholarship something in the last 3, 4, 5 years. In the second year, the graduate assistantships are all on campus for 1 year. In the second year, we actually kind of kick you out of the nest. We want you to get a different experience other than APU. And we work with you to help you become placed at a local 4-year or 2-year college or university. We have many, many partners in the community, and we help facilitate interviews and help people to find a position. And we find that those off-campus graduate assistantships typically pay between $9,000 and $12,000, a little bit more. The APU $7,000 is a bit on the lower end for graduate assistantships. The scholarships in year 2 range from $1,000 to $2,500, and those are based completely on need. So because you're getting paid a little bit more in the off-campus position, the scholarship is a little bit lowered. Our fees right now, I'll just tell you, our fees are $795 a unit. So the cost for the 2-year program, the whole thing, is $35,700. Eugene or Gwen, do you want to add anything?
Just add that we always also, recommend our students fill out the FAFSA, and depending on that estimated family contribution, you can be eligible up to, with the there's a state university grant that you can get for up to a little over $4,000 that you can get through that state university grant. There also is some scholarship opportunities. And then there's also federal direct loans that you're eligible for up to about $20,000, over $20,000 in unsubsidized federal direct loans. So those are possibilities too to help subsidize your education.
I'll just say at CGU, every incoming student is awarded a 29% fellowship. And then I know that Dr. Gonzalez seeks, we are here with 2 other graduate schools and 5 campuses. So Dr. Gonzalez works to secure student affairs kinds of positions throughout the campuses for her students. The students that come into the EDA program usually work with me in a research capacity, either doing some program evaluation support to the campuses or in some other greater capacity that I'm working in.
The other thing I'll add is we have a graduate assistant program also, but and in the past we've always been able to, anyone who wants a graduate assistantship was able to get one. That's not been true, honestly, this last year with COVID-19, that a lot of budget cuts and a lot of inability of programs to pay the GAs. And so we've had a few students who've not been able to get their GA position. So we hope that'll improve. But honestly, that's been a little bit hard this year.
Got it. And, I had asked Cindy about the size of the incoming cohort. Maybe we could each say that. Ours at this point is between 36 and 38 students each fall.
We are 25, and we only admit once a year. So usually the situation, I will also say, kind of pursuant to this discussion, a lot of what Dr. Fujimoto was saying also applies to us in the CSU in terms of scholarships and various grants. A lot of our students already come to us with some, they may be working already, and there may be only maybe a third to a quarter that we assist to try to find an internship. It may only be, an 18 to 20 hour position. But because the number of the cohort is so small, a lot of times we find almost like 95% employment. And by that, I mean only about 20 hours, because you're in school the other 20 to 30 hours.
Right.
Right now, we're admitting between probably 40 to 45. We get over 200 applicants, so it's still fairly competitive too.
Yeah. And Gwen, what's the size of your cohorts?
I think that we're aiming for 10 to 15 every semester right now.
Okay, thank you. So you can see that there's quite a range in terms of the size of the cohorts, and but still, across our program, similarities and differences. Okay, I'm just doing a little bit of a time check. It's 7:02. We're going to go ahead and answer maybe one or two more questions, and then again, I'm going to encourage you, if you have any questions about anything, please put them in the chat and we'll prioritize your questions. So my next question for the panelists is, tell us about what the classes are like. What is the academic work like in a graduate program in this area? And you might need to talk about it pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Well, I'll go first on behalf of Claremont. So we are in what we call a 2-1 format right now, where typically classes when they are held on campus are 3 hours, about 3 hours long. Right now we're in 2 hours, what we call 2 hours synchronous time, where the class and the professor get together online in Zoom, and 1 hour in asynchronous time, which usually involves project work where people are working together on a specific topic or project that is connected to an outcome associated with the class. We value that kind of collaborative work because it's so important in your training for the future. So that's how we're operating right now. We plan to be operating like that going forward in the spring, and everybody's holding their breath to what happens next summer and fall.
Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, our program is 48 hours, so full-time student is taking 12 hours each academic semester over 4 semesters. 21 units are very specifically student affairs types of classes. Student services and higher education, which includes the history of higher education and the history of student affairs. The impact of college on students, college student development theory, a fieldwork experience, which I affectionately call your GA on steroids. So we're really looking at what are you doing in your work job. Equity, diversity, and social justice, organization and administration, and campus crisis ethics and legal issues. You can take 6 hours of elective credit where you can work on another certificate if you want to, or you can have, and then that balance is 12 hours of pure counseling classes, or you can take 18 hours of counseling classes if you want that emphasis. We have 3 counseling-based master's degrees program. This one that we're talking about in student affairs, one in school counseling, which is what K through 12 folks would be taking, and one in clinical mental health, which is those who would want to be doing counseling full time. And so your counseling classes are mixed with students from those other two programs. Your student affairs classes are with members of your cohort.
So we're a 30 unit, 5 consecutive semester program. So you meet one evening a week from 4 o'clock till about 10 o'clock. It's changed a bit with COVID because people can't last that long on Zoom. But typically that's what we would do, is to have a class from 4 to 7 and 7 to 10, something like that. Well, you have a dinner break in between. But now we're considerably shorter because we are trying to make sure that you're staying awake on Zoom. So, but we also in the summer it's doubled up. So we have an 8-week semester in the summer in which you're taking 2 classes, and so you actually come twice twice a week during the summer 8-week period. So that's a very intense time. But the courses now are all online, and we're going to be that way in the spring. And as was said by my colleagues, we'll see what happens beginning next summer and fall. We're all hoping to be back face to face, but we're learning a lot too about what we can do online. So I can see us being a little more hybrid than we've been. I don't think we're not going to be totally online, but I think we can do some things online that we haven't done in the past that will make it a little more flexible for students. So that's what we're planning and hoping for.
Thank
I
you.
can say same thing, almost like a hybrid situation between Dr. Garrison and Dr. Fujimoto. This, we get it down to about 1 hour where we have synchronous time. And then students work a lot on their own, or they have individual, maybe 20, 30-minute appointments on a weekly basis with a faculty member. And yeah, we're going through into spring. So looking forward to that.
Yes, great. Thank you. The CCSD program at APU has a little bit of a different academic calendar. Rather than 16-week semesters that you would take classes across all weeks, we have 4 8-week terms, and students take 2 courses in each of those terms. So you have 2 classes for 8 weeks and those are done. Then you have 2 more classes for 8 weeks and those are done, and so on 4 times during the year. So it's kind of it's a bit like the quarter system, kind of fast and furious, but it seems to work well for our students. Very similar to what everybody has said regarding COVID-related matters. I'll just add that I think what you can expect in graduate school typically is heavier reading than you were used to and heavier writing than you were used to. Unless you were an English major where you were writing a lot, or some other major like a screenwriting major. I get feedback from students that they really haven't written this much in their careers, especially if they were coming from a large public institution with large classes where faculty just don't assign writing very much. So I would tell you that I'm guessing all of us have the goal for you that you will be much better writers by the time you leave our programs. That's one of the hallmarks of a master's degree program, is producing good writers and good researchers and critical thinkers. So I would also guess that in our classes, especially during the Zoom era, I'll call it, you're not going to get long lectures from your faculty. It's a lot of sharing of information, but it's really, we all are teaching each other. Many, many times I think in our courses, we're asking you to take material, do study and research on material, and present that material to your cohort mates. Or group projects are very much a hallmark of the graduate work in this field. So you can expect that the classes will be very interactive. This is absolutely not the kind of programs where you're sitting back and just receiving information. They're very active, particularly those of us that have counseling as a basis. We need you to practice your counseling skills in front of each other and in front of the faculty so that we can give you feedback on those skills as you grow them. Okay, let's see. Again, just going to encourage you if you have any questions. I know a few people have had to leave, but if you have any questions, just to put them in the chat.
I would just emphasize too, we do a lot of group work, and so you have to be willing to engage with your fellow cohort mates in a lot of group work.
Right,
And
exactly.
that's not easy for people to do, but our feeling is that when you work in student affairs, it's pretty rare that you're just doing something by yourself.
Right.
So you learn how to work with folks, and so
Yeah.
that's a big emphasis for us too.
Exactly. Why don't I just have us end on any comments that panelists have about the job market and what we think. I think COVID has really worried many of us, particularly students in grad school right now, or those of them thinking about it. Any observations or advice or kind of forecasting that any of us would do about how COVID might be impacting the job market into the future in student affairs?
So I can't speak directly to the student affairs job market, but I can speak to the data market. We're finding actually that the positions are holding steady. They're being offered and holding steady. I think that has a lot to do with institutions really wanting to understand much better who their students are, their market is, all variety of decisions that need to get made. And so the exiting positions that a graduate from the EDA program would have continue to be present, and those positions continue to be filled. So I'm actually very hopeful for my program.
I was going to comment on hopefulness as well. A lot of our students, I would say probably at least 2/3, go into community colleges for their first job, and typically they're community college counselors. It's entirely likely, I mean, regardless, depending upon the results of the election, really either way, conceivably, I could see that there will be a need to provide counseling and assistance to students so that they can efficiently be reemployed or, get new employment or what have you. And I can see that being the result of whatever administration comes into power as we start to get better in terms of our economy. And so I think that there's going to be a need, as there was, a slow but steady increase until this COVID experience shut us down. I think there'll be a need for people to be able to work with students, to be able to help in recruitment, advising, be able to help them find employment. And I think community colleges, although right now they're experiencing some decline, community colleges are the institution where people go to remake themselves, or where they go to pick up a skill, or even just to pick up a hobby. And so I think that there's the potential in the future for that. So I'm hopeful. And the key is getting into the system so that you're getting the educational qualifications. Because if you stall and say, oh, I'm going to wait because there's no jobs, the people that are in the pipeline that are getting the educational preparation are therefore in front of you because they've got the credentials and the acquired experience. So I sort of think like, don't stop.
Right. I agree completely with Jonathan. I think, what we've seen this summer and this fall has been scary, I think, for students that are in school right now in their master's programs right now, because we've seen a bit of a contraction of hiring and even hiring freezes, and even for people currently in their positions, some furloughs and some layoffs. I think part of that has been a response by higher ed, a very conservative, fiscally response of not understanding at all what COVID is going to do to higher ed and what COVID is going to do to higher ed budgets and funding streams. And that's, my heart just aches for our new professionals and our younger professionals who are experiencing all of this uncertainty and turmoil. But I do think it will level off. I think once we understand better going into the spring and summer what COVID will look like, once we, again, I'm making some assumptions here, but can get a better handle on this disease as a country and as a world. And once we learn more about how to continue to provide higher education even with COVID existing among us, I think that we'll see some of the positions, they might look different. I think some of the positions that we've historically had might look differently, but I do think that campuses will continue to have a need for counselors, advisors, as residence halls open back up, for resident assistants, resident directors, people that can teach and train. Our more specialty areas like veteran services, disability support services, first generation programs, our cultural centers, those needs are not going away. They're all going to be in existence. And so we'll need people who are trained and prepared to step into those positions. Lastly, I'll just say that the professionals in student affairs, it's what we call a graying field. So people are the rate of people retiring is rapidly increasing, which means we need an influx of younger professionals to fill those spots. So I think the future is bright, with a bit of a hiccup in this 2020-2021 timeframe.
I would add that this past graduating cohort is the first time we haven't had every student have a job offer at the end of the year. And so that was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah.
But I'm of the group that thinks higher ed has to drastically change to survive all of this. And so if you like change, and if you like to come in and implement and stir the pot and do things differently, now's the time to be able to do that. And so it's an exciting time. Higher ed is only going to survive if we're adapting and changing.
Right, exactly. And as I told my, I'll tell this story to the final 6 who are holdouts, who are still here. Good job. As I told my class this last week, I said, you know, someday you guys are going to be 47 years old and you're going to be sitting in your office and a young student's going to walk in and have a complaint about something. And in your mind, you're going to be thinking, I survived COVID. What are you being upset about? Because this is a challenging time. I mean, even those of us that are older would tell you, you know, this is hard. This is hard for everybody. But I have faith that our field will survive and that, you know, we will continue to thrive once we can feel a little bit more control over what's happening in the world and in our careers. Okay, well, let me wrap it up. Thank you again for those of you that are on the call for sticking with it. Is there anything that you want to ask? And I'll just say, you know, feel free to unmute at this point. Any last thing that you want to ask us?
I have a question, actually. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like with COVID-19 happening, there's been some good things in terms of things going virtually and things becoming more accessible to folks. And I was just wondering, how do you see that, like, changing programs in the future for the better? Do you imagine, you know, like things, you know, allowing to be both online and in person? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but that's just something I'm curious, because I've just loved like the increase in accessibility of things now that like we've been kind of forced to, unfortunately, but that's my question.
Somebody want to take that one?
I can tell you I was a diehard opponent of online education. The Long Beach program prided itself on being face-to-face, and we would, you know, die before going online kind of situation. And our chair was trying to get us to kind of think about hybridity. And I accuse him of causing all of this mess in the world because he basically got us all to go online. What I will say is I've become a faculty trainer in our area, and kind of was learning how to build the plane while I was flying it and teaching people how to fly it all at once over the summer. And under that really quick move, I really have come to appreciate a lot of the pedagogical benefits of online instruction. In the last month since we started in fall, have had the richest, best conversations with students in classes I've taught before face-to-face. I can, you know, going into the breakout rooms, the students are more prepared. I tend to it helped me because I tend to focus the readings. I don't do some superfluous stuff where I just kind of threw stuff in for busy. It caused me to focus on what is most important. And so I'm excited about opportunities. I do not want this to be the reality going forward where we're 100% online. And in a counseling focused program like we have, that, you know, it can't be. There does have to be some face-to-face interaction, but also a lot of counseling and advising is happening online now, and it's exciting. So our faculty is jazzed about the opportunities, but we also want to be back face-to-face. And I see that happening with my students who are doing internships now. They're doing a lot of their online peer work or undergraduate mentoring, and it's really exciting. So this has opened up a lot of opportunities.
I would echo a lot of that too, in terms of leadership too, because a lot of us are very diehard about, oh, you can't do leadership online, you know, you can't teach that stuff. So, and at the same time, we're learning a lot. And so I don't think we're, like I said earlier, not going to be totally online, but boy, there's lots of opportunity opening up. And I think, you know, we're going to be back face to face at some point, and we're looking forward to that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with what has been said. And I would also add, it's really been eye-opening to me that because student affairs and student services in higher ed for undergraduate students has had to go online. There have been just so many different and new software programs and techniques and ways that campuses are being creative to serve their students. We as graduate program faculty have to know all that, because I think we have to teach our students going through their master's programs how to be successful in that environment. That's actually where I think there's kind of still a big gap. You know, I'm trying to read everything I can get my hands on about best practices in student affairs and student services right now. But, you know, going into the future, graduates of our programs not only will have to have all the building blocks we currently have, student development theory, counseling skills, leadership development theory, etc., but we're going to have providing online programs and services as a building block because, you know, we didn't know that we needed to have that as a building block, but we do. Anything else that anybody wants to ask before I ring us off? Okay, well, thank you guys so much for being with us. Help me say thank you to our panel. Yay, good job, wonderful.
Nice to
And
meet everybody. Thank you.
I think I speak for everybody. If you have any questions moving forward, feel free to just reach out to us either on LinkedIn or via email or via our website. So good luck to all of you as you consider your decisions and you go through the application process. Look, I hope to see you in the stack of applications.
Have
Bye.
a great night. Bye-bye.
Good to meet you all. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. Really great. I'm going to stop recording.